So here in this problem, we are given the value of sine theta, which is negative 2 times square root of 6 over 5. And theta lies in the third quadrant. So we need to find out the value of the remaining 5 trig functions. So let's do that. So we'll start with whatever is being provided to us. So here we are given the value of sine theta. So sine theta, that's equals to negative 2 times square root of 6 over 5. So let's verify whether this value is correct or not. And that means if the sign is correct or not. For this, we need to understand the sign convention in each of the 4 quadrants. So we're going to go in the anti-clockwise fashion. This is going to be our first quadrant, followed by the second quadrant, third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. Now there's a mnemonic to remember. So we have to remember the mnemonic ASTC, written in the anti-clockwise fashion. Here A stands for all trigonometric functions are positive. So all positive. So S stands for sine. So sine is going to be positive. In the third quadrant, T means degree, so tangent is going to be positive. And C in the fourth quadrant means cosine, so the cosine function is going to be positive. Now since sine is positive, immediately cosecant function, which is the reciprocal of the sine function, that's also going to be positive. Reciprocal of the tangent function, that's the cotangent function, so that's also going to be positive. And reciprocal of the cosine function is the secant function. This means that in the second quadrant, except for sine and cosine value, cosecant value, everything else is going to be negative. Similarly, in the third quadrant, except for tangent and the cotangent function, all the other remaining trig functions are going to be negative. And in the fourth quadrant, cosine and secant will be positive, else everything else will be negative. Now it's given here that our theta lies in the third quadrant. So we know that in the third quadrant only tangent and cotangent is positive, meaning all the other trig functions are negative. So that's why we are being provided with a negative sine value. So this is a correct value. Now that we have the value of sine theta, we can immediately find out the value of cosecant theta, because cosecant theta, that's the reciprocal of the sine function. That's 1 over sine theta. So if we take the reciprocal of sine function, which is negative 2 times square root of 6 over 5, we're going to get negative 5 divided by 2 times square root of 6. Well, I'm leaving this value. If you want, you can also rationalize it. Now, we'll try to find out the value of cosine theta. For this, we'll have to use an identity. So so let's note down that particular identity. Sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta, so that's equals to 1, and we can replace the value of sine theta with this given value, which will help us obtain the value of cosine theta, because we can rewrite cosine theta as plus or minus square root of 1 minus sine squared theta. So what we'll do, we'll replace the value of sine theta with negative 2 times square root of 6 over 5. So let's find out that value. So we have plus or minus 1 minus negative 2 times square root of 6 over 5 whole square. This is going to give us plus or minus. So here we have 1 minus. So 2 times square root of 6 whole square, that's going to be 4 times 6. So that's 24 divided by 25. And when we solve this, 1 minus 24 over 25, so that's 1 over 25. So this is going to give us a value plus or minus 1 over 5. Now in the third quadrant, the tangent and cotangent are positive, so that means the cosine function is going to be negative. So this tells us that our cosine function has to be a negative value, so it's going to be negative 1 over 5. Now that we have the value of cosine theta, we can also find out the value of secant theta. That's because it's the reciprocal of the cosine function. So secant theta is the reciprocal of negative 1 over 5. So first let me note down 1 over cosine theta, so its reciprocal will be negative 5. Now we can find out the value of tangent theta. To do that, all we need is the value of sine and cosine. That's because the tangent function is the ratio of the sine function to that of the cosine function. So sine, that's given as 2 times square root of 6 over 5, and cosine theta, that's negative 1 over 5. So solving this, we're going to get 2 times square root of 6. So this is a positive value since we're in the third quadrant. And then we can also find out the value of cotangent theta, which is the reciprocal of the tangent function. So our value of cotangent of theta will be 1 over 2 times square root of 6. So hence we have successfully obtained the value of the remaining trig functions. So cosecant of theta is negative 5 over 2 square root of 6. Cosine theta is negative 1 over 5. Secant theta is negative 5. Tangent of theta is 2 times square root of 6. And cotangent of theta is 1 over 2 times square root of 6.